Hello everyone. The topic today we will cover is from the chapter property. Modes of acquisition of property. Modes of acquisition of property, which is coming under unit 4 of our subject jurisprudence. So according to Salmond, there are four different kinds of acquisition of property. And what are those acquisitions of property? These are possession, prescription, agreement, and inheritance. Now, let us first discuss possession. Possession. So, in case of res nullius, RESNULLIUS, it means a thing without an owner. Okay. So, in case of res nullius, anyone is at liberty to take and keep it, and that person makes it his own by the very act of taking possession. The possession of the material object is the title to the ownership of it. Possession is the objective realization of ownership. If a possessory owner is wrongfully deprived of the thing, that person can recover it. A person in possession is deemed to be the owner until and unless proved otherwise. A person in lawful possession cannot be ousted out, even by the owner, without observing the due course of law. Now, possession is what? Possession is the objective realization of ownership. We can say it is the prima facie evidence of ownership. The property which belongs to none, that is just now we have discussed about res nullius, it belongs to the first possessor of it. And that person acquires a valid title to it as against the world. Thus the fish of the sea and the birds flying in open sky belong to one who first succeeds in obtaining possession of them and who acquires an absolute title over them. So this mode of acquisition has been called as occupatio, OCCUPATIO in Roman law. A property which is already in possession of someone else, when acquired by possession, it gives a good title to the possessor. It gives a good title to the possessor against all the third parties. Except whom? Except the true owner. Even sometimes as against the true owner, the possessor is entitled to maintain his possession until evicted in due course by law. So in such a case of what we call adverse possession, there are in fact two owners here. The ownership of one is absolute and perfect, while that of the other is relative and imperfect, and often called as possessory ownership by reason of its origin in possession. Okay. So if we just simplify this, possession, it is the objective realization of ownership. And possession means what? It means physical control over a thing or an object. It is prima facie evidence of ownership. The property which is belonging to no one else, that is res nullius, it belongs to the first possessor of it. And that person acquires the valid title to it against the whole world. Right in rem. So a property which is already in possession of someone else, when acquired by possession, gives a good title to whom? To the possessor, against all third party, against all third person, except the true owner of that particular property. So even as against the true owner, the possessor is entitled to maintain the possession until evicted in the due course by law. In such a case of adverse possession, we call it as adverse possession. There are in fact two owners that we have discussed. The ownership of one is absolute and perfect, while that of the other is relative and imperfect, and often called possessory ownership by reason of its origin possession. Okay, of its origin in possession. So if a possessory owner is deprived of its possession by a person who is other than the true owner, he has the right to recover possession of the same. If property belongs to nobody, the person who captures and possesses it has a good title against the whole world. In this way, the birds of the air and the fish of the sea are the property of that person who first catches them. Okay. So if we simplify it, we have already discussed that possession is the prima facie evidence of ownership. Now, to make it more clear, to simplify it, let me cite one example here. Let's suppose A while walking through a road. A while walking through a road found a purse which was having let's say 5,000 rupees. Now in this example we can see that A, after picking up the purse which was having 5,000 rupees money, okay, A became what? Became the possessor of it. And as a possessor, A is having the right to possess that particular purse having 5,000 rupees. Now let's say B is the real owner. Let's say B is the real owner. Hey, A will be treated having prima facie evidence of ownership. Here A will be treated having prima facie evidence of ownership. And to prove that B is the real owner, B has to prove in the court of law that he is the real owner, that B is the real owner. So the liability to prove always lies on the person who is claiming to be the real owner of the property. And in this case, the liability will lie upon whom? Upon B. So if we try to see it from the perspective of res nullius, we have already discussed about res nullius, that is the property which belongs to no one. Then let's cite one example here. Let's say B was the true owner of a let's say of a gold ring, okay, and B is having no one in this world. B is having no one in this world, nobody. So one day while walking through a road, B lost his gold ring, and after some days, let's say B also died. Now the gold ring has become a property without any owner. Gold ring is what? It is a movable property. Now it is a movable property without any owner. Now suppose one day A found the gold ring nearby a dustbin, let's say, and took it in his hand. So here A became not only the possessor of the ring but also the owner. And this right of ownership which A acquired, because the gold ring is having no owner now. It is having no owner. And the right to ownership of A will be applicable as a valid title against the whole world. As A has become what? He has become the owner of it. Nobody can challenge him illegally. Okay? And then we have discussed, one point we have discussed, that even as against the true owner, the possessor is entitled to maintain his possession until evicted in due course by law. What do we mean by this? Let me cite one example here to make it more clear. Let's say A is the tenant and B is the landlord. Now A is having good relationship with B, let's say, okay, and without paying any rent, A continued to live in a small room in B's property. B is the landlord here. Now A, the tenant, was staying in that room, let's say, for 25 years. And when B, the landlord, died, let's say he died, B died, the children of B wanted to evict A. So here A cannot be evicted despite being a possessor, because A is enjoying the possessory right since, let's say, last 25 years without any interruption from the side of the landlord. So A can acquire the right of ownership in this regard if the competent court thinks that it is lawful. Okay. So A can evade the right of ownership also in this regard. Okay. And then we have discussed about that if a possessory owner is deprived of its possession by a person who is other than the true owner, he has the right to recover possession of the same. Now we can cite one example here also. Like for example, A is the tenant, that is the possessor. The actual owner is B, let's say the landlord, and the property in which A is residing was in the name of B because it was B's property. B is the landlord here. So let's say C is the brother of B. So here C, the brother of B, cannot come and evict A, the tenant, because C is not the true owner here. And that is the reason we can justify this particular sentence, that if a possessory owner is deprived of its possession by a person who is other than the true owner, he has the right to recover possession of the same. So A is having the right here. A is having the right to recover possession of the same. Okay. So let us come to the next point here. The next point is prescription. So what is prescription? Now, prescription, it is a mode of acquiring property. It may be defined as the effect of lapse of time in creating or destroying rights. So it is the operation of time as a vestitive fact, and it is of two kinds. It is of two kinds: positive or accusative, and negative or extinctive. So in the positive prescription, it is always a title or right, but in negative prescription, it is a destructive fact. The rational basis of prescription is the coincidence of possession and ownership of fact and right. Okay. Now, what is prescription? Prescription, it may be defined as the effect of lapse of time in the creation and extinction of a legal right. Okay. So it is the operation of time as a vestitive fact that we will discuss. Okay. And it has two aspects, namely positive or accusative and negative or extinctive. The creation of a right by the lapse of time is called the positive or accusative prescription, whereas the extinction of a right by the lapse of time is called extinctive or negative prescription. The person who is in continuous long possession adverse to its owner for an uninterrupted period of 12 years acquires ownership of the land, and the owner loses his ownership after the lapse of this period. Okay. Again, extinction of a right to sue for a debt after 3 years from the time at which it first became payable is an example of negative prescription. Now, if we simplify the language of it, what is prescription? What do we mean by prescription? So, according to Salmond, prescription, it may be defined as the effect of lapse of time. Okay, effect of lapse of time in creating and destroying rights. It is the operation of time as a vestitive fact. Now, you may ask this question: what do we mean by vestitive fact? Now, vestitive fact is one which determines positively or negatively the vesting of a right in its owner. So it is, we can say, one which either creates or destroys, or we can say transfer rights. It either creates or destroys or transfer rights. Okay. So let's cite one example to make vestitive fact more clear. If A gifts a house to B, A's right to ownership in the house is divested. Okay. Is the right now vest upon whom? Upon B. These two are thus what Salmond calls vestitive facts. Although Bentham, he prefers the term dispositive facts. Okay. Bentham prefers the term dispositive facts. Okay. Now, this is what vestitive fact is all about. So, prescriptions, these are of two kinds: positive or accusative prescription and negative or extinctive prescription. Now, positive, let us come to positive or accusative prescription. Now, positive prescription means the creation of a right by the lapse of time. For example, we can cite the example of right of way. It is acquired by continued de facto use of it undisputedly and openly for a period prescribed by law. Under Indian Easement Act, the period is 20 years. Now, let me make it clear. Okay. Now, let me cite one example here. Let's say A is using a particular path. We are talking about what? We are discussing about positive or accusative prescription. Okay. So, let's say A is using a particular path through B's property, let's say, without any interruption for the last 20 years. B, let's say after 20 years, gave A notice that this particular path cannot be used further, as B is planning to construct a building there. So here B cannot deprive A, as A is using the path for the last 20 years. And as per Indian Easement Act, if a person uses a particular path undisputedly and without any interruption openly for a period of 20 years, that person will get the right of way. That person will get the right of way. Right of way. This right of way will be acquired by continued, there is continued de facto use of it. Continued de facto use of it. Now, de facto, it means in fact or in reality. So here the right of way has been created by the lapse of time period. This right of way here in this particular example has been created by the lapse of time period. Okay. Now let us come to the second point of it. Negative or extinctive prescription. Now negative prescription, it is the destruction of a right. It is the destruction of a right by the lapse of time. Example, the right to sue for non-payment of a debt within a prescribed period is extinguished after the lapse of that particular period. And in India, the Limitation Act, we are having Limitation Act. It prescribes 3 years period for extinction of that particular right. Let me cite one example. Suppose A gave money to B, and there was let's say there was an agreement between them that money must be paid within a 1 year period, within 1 year. Both of them agreed to it. There was a mutual agreement, but B did not give the money to A even after 1 year. A did not take any legal action. A is having the right to sue against B. But let's say after 4 years, suddenly A went to the court of law to file a suit against B to return the money. So here the right to sue of A for non-payment of debt, it got extinguished because as per Indian Limitation Act, it prescribes what? It prescribes a 3 years period for extinction of the right. And here A filed the case after 3 years. So here A lost his right to sue against B. So due to lapse of time period, the right to sue of A, it got destructed here in this example. So this is an example of negative or extinctive prescription. So prescription can be divided into 2 points. A, positive or accusative prescription, and B, negative or extinctive prescription. Now let us come to agreement. What do we mean by agreement? Agreement is the third point here we will discuss. Okay. So agreement includes not merely contracts but all other bilateral acts in the law. Agreement includes not only contracts but all other bilateral acts in the law. Agreement is of two kinds, namely number 1 assignment and number 2 grants. By the former, existing rights are transferred from one person to another. By the former means by the assignment, existing rights are transferred from one person to another. By the latter, that is grants, new rights are created by way of encumbrance upon the existing rights of the grantor. We can cite the example of leases here. Okay. So if we simplify agreement, what do we mean by agreement? Okay. So agreement. Property may also be acquired by agreement, which is enforceable by law. Property may also be acquired by agreement, which is enforceable by law. Now, Patent, as we know, he was a very famous jurist, okay, an eminent jurist. Patent defines agreement as an expression by two or more persons communicated to each other of a common intention to affect the legal relations between them. It therefore follows that an agreement has 4 essential elements. What are those 4 essential elements? Number 1, it being a bilateral act. That is, there should be 2 or more parties to an agreement. Okay. Number 2, mutual consent of the parties. Mutual consent of the parties, it must be there. Number 3, it should be communicated. It should be well communicated with each other. Okay. And number 4, there should be common intention to affect the legal relationship. There should be common intention between the parties to affect what? To affect the legal relationship here. Now, if we simplify it, let's say, as we know that as a proprietary right in REM, agreement is mainly of two kinds. Okay, it is of two kinds. We have already discussed. As a proprietary right in REM agreement, it is of two kinds, namely number one, assignment, and number two, grant. Okay, so an assignment transfers the existing rights from one owner to another. Assignment, it transfers the existing rights from one owner to another. Example, we can cite the example of assignment of a subsisting leasehold from assigner to the assignee. Or to make it more simple, let me just cite one example here, one easy example here. So assignment, let's say, suppose A transfers his right to property to B by selling the property to B. So here it is a bilateral act between A and B because two parties are involved and mutual consent is also there. Proper communication, it is also present. And the object, that is the property, is legal in nature. That is, let's say the property is not having any existing dispute. So A and B created what? Created a legal relationship. And the right to ownership here has been transferred from A to B by forming what? By forming an agreement by way of assignment, because the existing right of A, it got transferred to whom? It got transferred to B. So this is a very simple example of assignment here. Okay. Now what is the next point here? The next point, under a grant, we have already discussed that agreement, it is of two kinds, namely assignment and number two, grant. Now let us discuss about grant. Under a grant, new rights are created by way of encumbrance upon the existing rights of the grantor. For example, we can cite the example of grant of a lease of land is the creation of agreement between grantor and the grantee. Now if I simplify it, grants. Let's suppose A is having a house, a particular house in which A does not live, let's say. Okay, like he is having another house, A is having another house, so he is not living there. So A decided what? A decided that B can live in his house, as B is not having a house to reside in the town. So a bilateral agreement happened between whom? Between A and B. And A decided to lease the house to B. A is the owner, there is no doubt regarding this, and continues to be the owner of the house. And B agrees to pay A rupees, let's say 35,000 a month in return of letting him to live there for 2 years, let's say. So here both A and B, they formed what? They formed a lease agreement which sets forth the exact dates when B can live in the house. That is, B can live there for 2 years. They also made an agreement that if B makes certain improvements or changes in the house, or let's say if B damages something related to the house, B will be liable to pay extra charge with the monthly payment. So here A got or we can say created a new right by way of encumbrance upon the existing rights, which is legal because both the parties agreed to it lawfully. Okay, both the parties agreed to it lawfully. So let us come to the next point here. After agreement, we have already discussed about agreement. Let us come to inheritance. Okay, agreement we have already discussed. Let us come to inheritance. So this is the fourth point. Inheritance. So inheritance, on the death of the owner, heritable rights of deceased survive to the heirs, to the legal heirs, and personal rights are generally not heritable, and proprietary rights are usually heritable. Okay, so there are some exceptions also. Okay, we will discuss. The representative bears the personality of the deceased and has vested in him all the inheritable rights. That is, rights are vested in the heir, okay, in the legal heir. So let me simplify this, okay, let me simplify this. We are talking about what? We are talking about inheritance, okay, we are talking about inheritance. So the death of the owner of property could result in two kinds of rights, namely, number one, inheritable, and number two, uninheritable rights. A right is heritable, a right is inheritable if it survives its owner, and it is uninheritable if it dies with him. I am repeating this again. The death of the owner of property could result in two kinds of rights, namely, number one, inheritable, and number two, uninheritable rights. So a right is inheritable if it survives its owner, and it is uninheritable if it dies with him, with that particular person. Now, proprietary rights are inheritable. Proprietary rights are inheritable. And most personal rights are uninheritable. But there are certain exceptions to this rule. For example, the right of action survives the death of both parties as a general rule. Proprietary rights may be uninheritable in case of a lease for life of the lessee or lessee only, or in case of joint ownership. Okay. Now let me simplify it first of all. What do we mean by inheritable rights? If I can cite one example here. For example, A is the real owner of a property. For example, let us say A is the real owner of a property. Now A is having his only son, let's say Y. His name is Y. After the death of A, what will happen? While Y will get the property of A, being the legal heir of A. So it is an example of what? It is an example of inheritable rights. Okay, inheritable rights. So as we have discussed, the death of the owner of property could result in two kinds of rights. First one is inheritable, the second one is uninheritable. So this is an example of inheritable rights. So uninheritable, how to explain it? Let me cite one example. Like A is the owner of a property and Y is the only son of A. So after the death of A, the property will devolve to Y, as Y is the legal heir here. But A, during his lifetime, had certain personal rights. Like let's say A had let's say the right to life. Okay. Now here, this personal right of A, it cannot be transferred to anyone, not even A's legal heir. Here, this personal right of A, it cannot be transferred to anyone, not even A's legal heir, because this right to life of A got extinguished with his death. And on the other hand, Y, the son of A, is also having this right to life, this particular right. So there is no question of transferring, because we all have the right to life, which is connected with our body being a personal right. Okay, personal rights are always connected with our body, as we know. Okay. Now there are certain exceptions also, like in case of let's say right of action. Now what do we mean by right of action? Right of action, it means the privilege of instituting a lawsuit. Right of action is it means the privilege of instituting a lawsuit arising from a particular transaction or state of facts, such as a suit that is based on a, let's say, on a contract or a tort, a civil wrong. Okay. Now to make it more clear, there are certain exceptions that we will discuss now. Let's say A and B done a contract. A and B done a particular contract and there was a breach of contract. The breach of contract which was done by B, and A as such faced tremendous financial loss. Now after some months, what happened? Due to financial loss, out of depression, let's say A died. Now here legal action against B can be continued by A's son. Okay, Y also. So Y is A's son here. So Y is having what? Y is having the right of action in this regard, which earlier his father A had. So here the personal right of A is getting continued by his son Y. That is the right of action which A had. Okay. And then we have also discussed about that that there are certain exceptions to the general rule. For example, the right of action survives the death of both the parties, a general rule, and proprietary rights may be uninheritable in case of a lease for life of the lessee only, or in case of joint ownership. So the lease which is a lifetime lease, the lease which is a, let's say, which is a lifetime lease, will come to an end with the death of the lessee. Lessee means a person who holds the lease of a property, we know, like for example a tenant. So here the property rights, it is uninheritable in this regard. So it is an exception, we can say it is an exception. So the rights which a dead man leaves behind him, it vests in his representatives or successors, but he has also to bear the liability of the deceased. This liability is, however, it is limited to the amount of property which he has acquired from whom? From the deceased. Thus, inheritance is some sort of legal and fictitious continuation of the personality of the dead man. Let me simplify it. Let's say A purchased a property from B. Let's say A purchased a particular property from B, and the amount of the property, let's say it was 1 crore. Okay. So A during his lifetime could only pay, let's say half of the amount of that property, and then A died. Now the legal heirs of A will be liable to pay the remaining amount of the property to B. Okay. The liability of the legal heirs of A in this regards will be limited up to the amount of the property only. That is here the remaining amount of the price of the property. Okay. So here we can say the personality of A is getting continued by his legal heirs, which is not only legal in nature but also fictitious in nature. Okay. Now let us discuss about succession to the property of a person. Okay, succession to the property of a person may either be testate or it may be intestate. That is by means of will or without a will. Testate means by means of a will, and intestate means without a will. Okay. So succession to the property of a person may either be testate or it may be intestate. That is by means of a will or without a will. So if the deceased had made a will, succession would take place according to the terms to the will. But if let's say if there is no will, then succession will take place by the operation of law, which is known as non-testamentary succession. So in case there are no legal heirs, in case there are no heirs of the deceased, the property shall vest in the state. So let me cite one example here. Testate. Testate means what? It means by means of a will. Let me give one example here. A made a will during his lifetime and partitioned his property among his legal heirs. Let's say Y and Z, they are the legal heirs here. Here after the death of A, the legal heirs Y and Z will get the properties as per the will created by whom? Created by A during his lifetime. Okay. Now let me cite a second example. Intestate. Intestate means without a will. So let's say A did not make any will during his lifetime, and after his death there was a dispute among his legal heirs Y and Z. His legal heirs are Y and Z. So here, as there was no will, the property will be partitioned as per the operation of law, or we can say as per the law of the land. as this is known as non-testamentary succession. And what was the last point we have discussed? In case there are no heirs of the deceased, the property shall vest in the state. So if A is having no legal heirs, let's say, then what will happen? Then the property of A after A's death will be acquired by whom? By the state. It will be acquired by the state. Okay. So inheritance. It means what? Inheritance, another method of acquiring property. Okay, inheritance is another method of acquiring property. That is, when a person dies, certain rights survives him and pass on to the heirs and successors. So there are others which die with him. There are other rights which die with him. Those rights which survive him are called heritable or inheritable rights. Those rights which do not survive him are called uninheritable rights. Property rights are inheritable as they possess value. Personal rights are not inheritable as they constitute merely his status. However, there are certain exceptions to this general rule which we have discussed. Personal right may not die in case of hereditary titles. Property rights may be uninheritable in the case of lease for the life of lessee or lessee only, or in case of let's say joint ownership. Okay. So succession of the property of a person may be either testate or intestate, that is by means of a will or without will. If the deceased has made a will, then succession would take place according to the term mentioned in the will. But if there is no will, then succession will take place by the operation of law, which is known as non-testamentary succession. So in case there are no heirs of the deceased, his property shall go to the state. Thank you.